Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Monday. I'm Rob the accountant. I like to help people build companies and find solutions to problems that may come your way. Have a question? Stop by robtheaccountant.com, scroll halfway down, hit me on the email, and ask your questions, and I'll try to reply via email or video. So the election, and I'm going to keep looking around for a little bit because I'm out here walking around my dog. He's unleashed, and I don't want him to run with some squirrel or something like that. But we have one election that's done, and we have a new administration that's coming in at the federal level. But what I want to do is I want to talk about New York. New Yorkers, we need to demand change too. I think it's time for us to really start talking about Democrats in New York and what we really stand for. You know, if you live in New York, there isn't an expressway or a throughway that you don't get off of in this state where you don't see a group of desolate people in chairs, panhandling, and begging for money. You could be going east, you could be going west, you could be going north, you could be going south. It doesn't matter if you're in Buffalo. It doesn't matter if you're in Rochester. It doesn't matter if you're in Syracuse. It doesn't matter if you're in Albany. It doesn't matter if you're in New York City. It doesn't matter if you're in the 5 boroughs. Everywhere you go in New York, you see such despair, isolation, and depression. And the reason is because over 52% of people in the state receive some type of assistance. And, you know, I'm an orphan, so I'm a byproduct of the projects out of Brooklyn. And the reality is when you give a man fish and you don't teach him how to fish, then you force this same person to be reliant on the state. And so what you see the state of New York through its policies that on one hand they force the taxpayers of New York State. Now I am not against profitable businesses. I am not against nonprofits to a certain degree. But the NFL is a nonprofit. And in New York State, even though we have 3 teams here, New Yorkers are helping one team, which is the Buffalo Bills, fund their new stadium. And what's striking about this is odd because the family that owns the Buffalo Bills is a billionaire family, and they just actually sold a percentage of the team to an investor group, which means they had like a BlackRock group of investors come in and dump a whole bunch of money so that the owners can get richer and have more money. And the residents of New York, well, we pay through higher taxation for a stadium that, in all fairness, will host 8 games a year. That's just one issue. We don't talk about every school district in New York State that is being forced by Governor Hochul after Kamala Harris lost her election, that every school district in this state is being forced to go out and buy electric buses that break down and do not work in the wintertime. We want to force districts to buy electric buses that will strand your kids in the middle of the winter storms. This is logic, right? So part of the problem with living here in New York is a lot of people do feel like as a Democrat, their shit don't stink. But when you live in Albany and you live in New York City and you have the city of Yonkers tax and you got the New York City tax and you got the state tax and then you got the toll tax and then you got the gas tax and now you're going to have congestion pricing tax, it doesn't matter how much money you make in the state. because New York takes 60% of it at every step of the way. And we don't talk about it. We don't stop it. You know, the last governor, right? Think about this. The last governor was removed from office for fondling the breasts of law enforcement female officers. That litigation today is costing the state of New York over $22 million. The current governor, she wants to give people who have come here illegally work permits, but she was denied that at the federal level by Biden. But she'd give all those people work permits. In addition, New York State takes 50% of all the gambling revenue that comes in the state. The state owns the lottery, okay? They tax the tolls, they tax the gas. So why are New Yorkers still suffering so much when the state is spending so much? It's because the state spends, and they don't do anything to alleviate the problems. They create more problems. Okay, so if you want to change the environmental issues in New York State and you want to believe in electricity as the future, then you have to do things to support that. So you have to do one of two things. You either have to build more nuclear power plants to sustain the electric grid, right? Or you have to frack, which is, again, a proven thing in 48 other states, but New York doesn't want to do it because some people and a population in some town of 300 people might get some colored water that we can deal with. Fracking isn't some absurd science on the fringe benefits of civilization. It's a process that has been working for the last 15 years, and it was declared so adamantly by New York that we're not going to frack. Just like when Amazon wanted to put a headquarters in New York City and how people who look like me, it was somebody who looked like me who said, well, we can't have those jobs in the state. That wouldn't be good for the people. You know, you haven't provided enough housing for them. Well, those jobs and that income goes to, I believe, the state of Virginia. So that Amazon headquarters went to Virginia while the people of New York suffer. And so every city that you go through, every place you go through, you see the desperation of people who are in need. And it's not because they're not getting money. They're getting plenty of money. So how do we change this? Well, for one, I think we need new leadership. I'd like to put an exploratory committee together. I'd really like to run on the Democratic ticket for governor, but I don't think my current governor is going to step aside for anybody because she knows what's best for everybody. But this is what I think we need to do. We look at Florida and we see the governor down there is really not really a nice guy. He reinvents things. He tries to rewrite history. He burns books. Think about that. He burns books. But he attracts everybody to Florida under this idea of no taxation, which is a bullshit lie. Okay, the state might not tax you, but if you own a home and you can find an insurance policy, there's $5 to $10 grand. If you want to drive around in a car, that's $3 to $5 grand. If you go anywhere, they tax you at every single point of the state. So it's not free to live in Florida. There's no middle class in Florida. There's poor people and then there's wealthy people. You're one or the other. So here in New York, what we could do is we could set policies, one, to actually start building some more nuclear power plants, since eventually electric probably is going to be something that's got to be here to stay, right? So you're going to need the power infrastructure. So we could stop being all scared about nuclear and understand that we have a lot of lakefront in this state, a lot of streams, okay? So we could build more nuclear power plant. Two, the utility companies in the state that operate, a lot of them are not owned by interests from New York. They're owned by foreign interests. They're owned by people who want to make money off of you. And so what I say to people is, if you actually tell New Yorkers how much electricity your local utility is required to buy from New York State hydropower, you know, the people who power the Niagara Falls Dam, you know, that free electricity every day of the week that goes on from those falls, all the utility companies, according to the Public Service Commission last year, were only forced to buy 20% of their supply from New York. They took rest of their supply from coal and things that made them money. So I'm not opposed to people making money. Let's make more money. But we make more money in the state by, one, building some more nuclear power plants, and two, it's time in the southern tier to take care of the people in the southern tier of the state. And you take care of the people in the southern tier by letting fracking go. And you bring the intelligence, you bring the degree, you bring the capacity, you bring the knowledge set from all of our wonderful universities, and you bring it to southern tier of New York. You know, instead of making everything in New York a landfill or some piece of shit, let's start making New York better. New York should be the best state in the union to start a business in. You know why? We got no hurricanes, we got no tornadoes, we got no wildfires. The only thing we got here is a government that reaches too far and doesn't do enough to protect its citizens. And you know, one of the things that we may or may not see with Donald Trump, and who knows if it'll be a good thing or not, is a lack of lawlessness. You know, see, the problem with Joe Biden is, you know, if you've got legislators who have to be elected at the local level and are always waving this injustice flag, well, the federal government through the Constitution reigns supreme. And through the Supremacy Clause, the federal government could easily, if the FBI wasn't diverted on political persecutions, could really start moving in a lot of these cities and taking out the most dangerous people. So I'm looking forward to see if Donald Trump is going to do that and keep his word on those things. But I think it's time that New Yorkers, Democrats in New York, need to say, what do you want, people? You're making no money. Your food is expensive as shit. Your houses are expensive as shit. Everything you touch. Some of you don't even have cars in the state. Do you believe that crap? It is 2025, and a lot of you can't afford cars, not because you're not making the money to afford a car, it's because your living expenses relative to owning a car would just bankrupt you. And we just need to find a way to deal with this. So we need to reverse the electric buses, screw this crap. You know, up here, our local RTS company bought a whole bunch of electric buses. They didn't work. Now they're buying a whole bunch of hydrogen buses. And that's one of the problems, is that when you start telling people what they got to do, then everybody sooner or later becomes somebody that has to do something because of somebody else. And we just have to stop this shit. So I think it's time for the government at the federal and the state level to stop mandating anything. If the private market wants electric cars, the private market will get electric cars. If the private market wants gas cars, it'll get gas cars. But what we need to do is to stop the New York State government from doing things that put every single resident of this state in poverty. Everybody in this state is poor unless you're a millionaire. You know what I'm saying is true. You feel it every day. Everybody just went out and got rattled for Donald Trump and the Joe Biden thing. But what we need to do is we need to start getting rattled for shit right here that costs us money right now. We shouldn't be subject to policies and monetary fines and taxation that forces everyone to just live in their home every day of the year, all year long, and forces every single expressway that has an exit in New York State to have a whole bunch of people setting up chairs in such desolation, begging just so they can go have more drugs. We need to address these issues from an economic point of view. And the billionaires that come from the foreign countries and arrive in New York City, they only help the people in New York City. They never help the rest of the state. So in order to help the rest of the state, I just think somebody like me or somebody like you should bring forth some ideas that help New York make money. Help New York be the number one state to start a business in. Help New York be the number one state to live in. Help New York to be the safest state to reside in. And help New York to actually be the most diversity and inclusive state in the union, along with the state, sadly, that has some of the most lunatic abortion laws. But hey, if that's your thing, you are protected here, right? So everything could even be better about New York. It's not make New York great again. It's just help people in New York find the means and the opportunity to make their lives better. And I think between Governor Hochul and Andy Cuomo and, there's a few other people in the legislators, but they're going to bicker every day long. The executive controls the direction of the state. And if our executives were actually paying attention to the people, actually really paying attention to the people instead of just showing up at the black church every Sunday and then posting that shit up on LinkedIn, if you were really focusing on the people, then you would enact policies and procedures, and you would bring forth laws that help the whole state, all of the citizens, all 22 and a half or 23 or 24 million of us, who knows, some new ones show up every day, but it would help all of us grow together and not just one group getting rich on the backs of everybody else. I'm Rob. Thanks for listening to my rant today. I hope all of you guys have a great Thanksgiving day. I hope you spend time with family. I hope you eat big turkey, lots of cookies, lots of cakes and ice cream, because you're going to have to work out for the next couple weeks because you got Christmas right behind it. So I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving, and I'll be putting together my exploratory committee this time for a run at the governor of New York, because not only is the rent too damn high, but life is too damn high. Have a good day, folks. Bye for now.